Sam Battlefields here. Thanks for joining me. I wanted to do a little bit of a journey into the constraint-led approach. So, a few months ago, my coach came to me and said, "I want to implement a method of coaching, a method of training, where we primarily use games." In order to teach people how to do Jiu-Jitsu. Initially, I was like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." Like, I know that gamification of a variety of things is beneficial. Gamification of gambling obviously isn't, but that's how we learn, and that's how we can get better and acquire skills. Did I know what I was on about back then? Hell no. And in many ways, what Alex was talking about, it went over my head a little bit. I was still in the mindset of, yeah, but what about the techniques? Like, how are we going to teach the techniques? Blah, blah, blah. What I've since discovered, and very recently, is that I was a broken record that I've heard over and over and over and over again in all of the podcasts that I've listened to with a guy named Greg Souders. Check Greg Souders out. He's essentially brought this constraints-led approach, which is a scientifically backed and sort of current top model of movement improvement, learning, that sort of thing. And all these arguments, and they aren't really arguments, but they're all the same sort of, I don't get it, I just don't get it, responses to when this Greg Souders starts talking about, we essentially play games. Now, Greg uses different terminology, but essentially, when we started putting things into play, I realised that, we have been doing something similar. We probably just haven't gone all the way. So I would say we're about 60% where we've been explaining concepts behind the movement. So rather than just being your typical BJJ gym, we have been, and a typical BJJ gym, it teaches techniques, you collect techniques, and the idea is that if you collect enough techniques, then you fill all the gaps in your chain, right? There's one of the things that I learnt when I was early on in the piece was that purple belts would have 2 to 3, maybe 4 techniques in a chain that they'll be able to chain together, whereas a brown belt would have, say, 5 to 10, and a black belt would have chain upon chain. So, chains that offshot off to other chains and that sort of thing. At blue belt, you'd have 1, maybe 2, and then at white belt, you're just collecting those. So, this Greg Souders was the introduction that Alex had to this style of coaching, and Greg Souders talks about this guy Rob Gray. I've recently just finished Rob Gray's first book, listened to a ton of these podcasts, so I'm now focused on how I can get what the constraints-led approach is into my classes. Not only my classes that I'm teaching or that I would teach, but the classes that I'm taking. So how can I better utilize this? Okay. Now, I'm fucking loving it. Like, I can't begin to tell you how excited I am. I am fucking loving it. All right. I reckon in the past 3 weeks, my game, my execution of my knowledge of the game has improved 100%. I mean, this morning when I was rolling, I don't think I thought of one technique. Not one. Not once did I stop and go, oh, what do I do here? Right? And that's plagued my game for so fucking long, it's not even funny, right? So anyway, let's pull it back, Sam. Getting too excited again. So what I wanted to do was, what I'm looking to do is implement this. Now, I'm very early on in the piece. I'm much more read up, and when I say read up, it's all on Audible, so don't give me shit. I have a full-time job, and I run an academy, and I do some other stuff. But I'm basically injecting this in my head, and one of the good things is we've been talking about concepts. We are big fans of alive training. I've been a big fan of Matt Thornton. I've literally just finished his book, The Gift of Violence. If you get to check it out, check it out. Really, really highly recommended. But a lot of his concept, of Matt Thornton's concepts of aliveness, is in this constraints-led approach. But what we're doing is we're taking the idea of a technique, and we're just throwing that out the window in many senses of the word. And you know, at first this shocked me. I was like, but how are you going to teach this stuff? How are you going to label it? How are you going to have nomenclature for it? How are you going to do this? And so there was a little bit of pushback from me in that when Alex first spoke about it, I spoke about, well, hang on a sec, what about, you know, like some people will like that technique-based approach with that systemization. That's what I called it, like that idea of collecting individual techniques and then chaining them together. And then the more I listened and like I have done a little bit of reading, but the more I listened and read about this, the more I realised, fuck, that's not how we learn. That's not how I learn. There's an underlying concept behind everything that I've been desperate to get. I mean, I have, and you know, this is kind of a humble brag, but it's not even a humble brag, it's a straight out brag. You know, every time I've been tested for, you know, aptitudes and all that sort of thing, I've consistently been in the top 1 percentile for engineering. I've been consistently in the top 10th percentile for English. Don't worry about maths, right? Forget about that. But those two I have consistently shown a high aptitude for. Now, what this says to me is that, you know, I'm sitting here, I'm a purple belt, been a purple belt for nearly 3 years. I was a blue belt for 6 years. Why the fuck could I not get to that next level quicker? You know, I'm a smart guy. It's not like, yeah, okay, I'm overweight. I get that. That's 100% on me. But even now, I move better than, I would say, 94% of the population. Maybe 90. Let's say 90% of the population. Yeah. Actually, let's say 95% of the population. Made up figures, alright? But it wasn't that. It wasn't that. It was the fact that the information I was getting, I was trying to replicate positions with my body and I'm trying to put my focus into where my arms and legs should be, right? Trying to replicate someone else's viewpoint of it. That's not how someone learns. Well, that's not how I learn. And based on a couple of experiments that I've been running recently, that's not how people learn. Like people, so last year, I haven't been this excited about a methodology since I started teaching at the end of last year. Since I broke my hand and had to teach from a perspective of theory. So I had to delve into and run mental games and mental positional things that allowed me to see a process, etc., etc. And I think that process of me learning that, of me going through it mentally and then having to work out the steps, etc., that's helped me considerably in the past 3 weeks when I've been putting together these games, because what I'm now not looking for is the steps that make things work, but the core movements that people need to do in order to execute a wider technique. So I'm kind of going to leave it here as like an intro to what I'm doing, but I'm going to use this channel as a sort of a scientific, scientific is a wanky way to say it, but a progression of videos of when I teach, what I learn, what they learn, and what I can do to improve as I learn more about this constraints-led approach. One of the things that I think has really stuck with me with this Greg Souders is he said he wants to be the best coach he can be. And that was something that I've said I wanted to do, but every time I've gone and looked at things like sports psychology degrees, or even just, you know, a certificate to get my foot in the door, that sort of thing, it's all, I don't know, weak. So anyway, I've recently been reading a number of things. There's a couple of things that I'm learning to optimize movement is the next book. I'll be hitting that up basically from now. So hopefully that helps me even further create these games, etc. I'm going to be doing a ton more listening and learning about how Greg does it. I'm going to be doing a ton more on there's a couple of other books that I've got coming in. One is the Constraint-Led approach, but I want to use this channel moving forward as my progression through this constraints-led landscape, and how it helps me improve and how it helps my students improve. I hope you enjoy it. I hope it's good for you. Much love. I'll speak to you soon.